Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is help you on how to do activity 3.5, applied statistics, in Google Sheets. So what I've done so far is I've went ahead and I have a set of data that looks very similar to the data that you started with. That way you can follow with me on step by step, but we know that the work you produce is of your own. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the sum. So to help switch back and forth, worst thing I'm going to do is look for the mean. Now to calculate mean, I need to take the sum of my numbers and the number of numbers I have, or numbers of data set, and then we're going to find mean. Now, what you could do is you could have your calculator out. You just add all these numbers, punch in your calculator, or we can make Google Sheets do this for us. You could do this in Excel just as well. Now, when I type the equal sign, what I'm telling Google Sheets that I want to do a function. The function of adding all of the pieces up would be sum. So you're going to do capital SUM. Open up your parentheses and highlight the data you want to put in there. Close your bracket, hit enter. The next would be your numbers of numbers, and you would need to count this out. So I've got, looks like 11 pieces of data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sorry, I got 12 pieces of data. And to find mean, what you need to do is you need to division, correct? What you're going to do is you're going to take your sum of your numbers, divide it by your number of numbers, and hit OK. This is going to produce a very long decimal for me, and I don't like that. So I'm going to tell Google Sheets to decrease the number of decimal places down to 2. Wonderful. So we're going to call this mean now done. Let's use a different green. Next part we're going to look at is would be how do you do the other two parts that we're looking for, and that is median and mode, where median is your middle number. So what you can do is you can highlight your data set and hit right click. Under this right click you'll find a sort range button, and you're going to sort your data numerically. So my smallest values are at the top, my largest values are at the bottom. And so then we can say that our median is going to equal whatever number is in the middle. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to tell Google Sheets to do our function for us. We're going to equal and then type in median. We're going to highlight our data set range and hit OK. So the median is calculated for me, saying that my median number is 8.1, and that's because it would lie between these two numbers. My mode, what you can hit is hit equal and then type in mode. Now the problem about Google Sheets is that it wants to make sure what kind of mode you're talking about. You can have regular mode, single, or multimodal mode. And since we don't know if our data is multimodal, we're going to go ahead and click multi and then highlight our data set again. Now, if there is, and there happens to be a multimodal set in this one, it will pop out the numbers in there as well. If I were to have 3, it'd pop down 3, 4, and 5, so on and so forth. So now what we can call is that our median and mode are also finished as well. Next thing I'm going to do is we're going to look at how to get ready for standard deviation. Once you do the standard deviation of this data, part B, I'm going to show you how to use Staplet. That way you can be able to do this on your own a little bit easier, and using Staplet, which is a program, hopefully it'll be smoother. What you're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create these 3 columns in Google Sheets. We're going to call this X. we're going to call the second one is going to be x minus mu, and then x minus mu squared. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can format that to allow me to, nope, doesn't look like it. So I'm going to hit squared. This will allow me to hopefully find the standard deviation of my data pretty quickly. So my data set's over here. All I'm going to do is highlight it, hit Control C, and then paste. If you notice there, it went white first, so I hit Control Shift Paste, Control Shift V, and that just brings in just the numbers. Now what I'm going to do is type in my data set, which is the number right next to it, minus my average, or sorry, my mean, and that's going to be that number as well. Now the first couple of these are going to pop out as negative, and that's okay. What you can do though is there's this little square at the bottom right, and you're going to drag that down. And what this does for you is it should, oh, I'm going to have to type in, I'm going to do one boo-boo, I'm going to take a step back on that. I'm going to go ahead and just type in that mean, all right? Because what it's going to do is as I drag this down, it will take this number minus 8.13, so on and so forth, and we get some acceptable numbers. Now what I can't do is I can't just click on the mean cell, because when you drag down, it'll also drag down other cells with it. So if I were to double click on this one, it would take F12, which is this cell right here, minus 8.13. Now what I'm going to do is take my number right next to it, this x minus mu, and square it. So that equals this number to the power of 2. So I'm going to hit the little caret symbol and hit 2. And just like we did before, drag this down, and that allows all my numbers to pop in. Remember, we don't like to see lots of decimal points, so I'm just going to bring that back down to 2 decimal points. And that's up here on the somewhere in the middle on the leftish side, decrease the number of decimal places. So with that, how do we find our standard deviation? Well, the standard deviation would then be, so let's call this standard.dev, all right, for standard deviation. This would then be equal to the square root of the summation of all these numbers. So let me take a step back there. I might be doing too much for us. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the sum. So the sum here is going to equal sum of this part right here. And I get a standard deviation of a total of those sums being 1.31. Now I'm not quite done with finding standard deviation. So what I've got is I know that my data is going to be the square root of your sum here divided by your number of numbers, and that's going to be 12. And so what I can say then is that of my data set here, my standard deviation being 0.33, so somewhere within my mean of 8.13, right around here, you can say most of your data falls within 8.13 minus 0.33 or 8.13 plus 33. All right, now you can either show me this being done on your lab notebook or your engineering notebook, or you can do this in Google Sheets and then make a screenshot of this information share it to me, and be good to go. Either one's okay. However, let's make sure that we got our information done correctly. So I'm going to show you how to use Staplet. So what I'm going to do is hop over next and do one quantitative variable single groups. My variable name, let's just call this data. And my data, I'm going to go back to. Let me go back. There we go. Copy and just paste this data in there. Begin analysis. So what we find here is that Staplet will produce all this information for me really quickly. So it says, there you go. There's your number of numbers. There's your mean, standard deviation. Now, that could be due to rounding, where my number is a little bit different than theirs. My minimum is 7.6. My max is 8.8. And this produces a histogram of my information. What you're going to do is click on this little graph type, and we're going to do histogram. And we have our histogram of our data. We can see the majority of our data falls in this range, following on with tapering off to the left, and then tapering off to the right as well. Okay? What I want you to do is show me this. When you do your data, you can either make a screenshot of it or draw it in your notebook, and that would be part C.